welcome to Synchronicity. Just a little scheduling change thing so we can have this more regular and understood. I'm going to move the podcast to Monday release time. I will probably end up recording them Monday, so we can expect hopefully around this time every week, but if not, sometime later in the day on Monday. So it's not going to be like first thing. Obviously, if I have guests or something like that and I get a bonus episode, I will put that up as applicable. But I think also, I'm not sure, but in an effort to, really show some love for the patrons, I will probably start posting a lot of guest episodes there. Not exclusively, I don't want to gatekeep content, but I do want to throw those guys some rewards as I steady the ship and get it together again. It's like running a podcast is not as easy as it may seem. You have to, first of all, the hardest part, I won't say the hardest part, because sometimes it's not that hard. But I would say the intangible aspect of it, from what I can tell, I listens to a lot of podcasts now. I do, and you really have to be able to talk for a long period of time as like a monologue. That's not easy. It's like you're trying to talk for 10 minutes straight. You sound like a lunatic. Granted, I also sound like a lunatic, but hopefully there's some semblance of organization behind the chaos. That's what we're going to hope for. Okay, big episode today. I want to start it off. The overarching theme of this episode will emerge. I haven't quite pinned it down, but I have stuff I want to kind of talk about and go over that I think is probably going to be appropriate for you if you're listening. But I want to start with a comment in the Discord under the imagination tab, because that was channel. Jesus, panic in the Discord. You know what I mean? That is kind of what's going on there, just from one person. There's been some very thoughtful responses, but this is based on the last episode I recorded where I was like, hey, maybe imaginate, fucking Christ, imagine something for someone in your life or some other person, right? Imagine something good happening or them telling you the good news, right? That's like the best thing you could do for them. Even better than overtly helping. I think I had a dream about this last night. It was super weird. I don't really remember it, but it was like I was helping someone. They're like, definitely don't help that person like this way. Imagine them actually being better. It was a very meta dream. Anyway, this comment in the Discord was based on that suggestion. So I'm not going to give the person's name, this anonymous, but I tried imagining my mother as a normal person and not a narcissist. As it turns out, now she's stealing money from my dad, who is suffering from dementia. So yeah, it isn't working. Let's break this down. First of all, lots of love to you who posted that. I'm spending time on this because I do want you in particular to understand that, but this will be useful for anyone who's going through this situation, which is like, hey, I imagined this thing, right? I felt it. I really I nailed it. It felt natural. And then it got worse. It not only is that not change the thing that I was intending to change, there is now worse stuff happening. So I conclude that this is not working. All of this is painting the picture of something which you firmly believe. The hardest, I don't want to say the hardest part, what can be challenging about this is you genuinely have to change your belief structure until it feels natural. And it should be to the point where if all this stuff is coming into your life, right? Worst outcomes, not working. You have to first accept that as something that you believe, right? And then determine it is not working. All you're doing, I just want to give you a quick little analogy. Say you plant something in the ground, right? You plant this tomato plant. You're really excited for it. Special, Cherokee purple tomatoes. You're super psyched for it, right? And you plant the seeds and you water it and the sun's out. It's hot weather. It's perfect for tomatoes. And, like a week or two in, you're like, man, I see some mold in another area close to it, but I see some mold on a plant that's growing there. I don't know, a basil or something. You then dig up the tomato seeds and you go, fuck, it's not working, right? So it's definitely not working. I've dug up. Those seeds literally are the husk there. It's the thing that grows into your experience of what's going on. Just to be clear, what we're kind of doing here is you're going from a state of innocence where you're just like not totally grasping, not you particularly, everyone. We're always doing this. Trust me. Always. It's annoying how always it is. It's never not always happening, which is very annoying. You know, you got like, I've been doing this like health dance for the past, it feels like month and a half, you know, between the COVID and the kids getting sick. And I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. Can I just can I just be like super healthy? Whatever circumstances need to arise for that to happen, I am now appropriating that state. I'm fed up with it. That's usually how it happens for me, by the way. I just get fed up with the state. I'm like, enough already. It's those states where they kind of creep on you and you really start to believe it and you don't notice it that can be particularly pernicious. But in this case, here's what you do, right? So your mom, right? You have this belief of her based on her actions, most likely, and based on your feelings around those actions, which may adhere to the clinical definition of a narcissist, which I would just like to point out is a label and a term that is now wildly probably misappropriated. I'm not saying it is in this case, but it's an observation of certain behaviors and admissions potentially from that person. And then we go, oh, well, that person's very self-obsessed. They only care about themselves. They only work for their own self-interest. And we go, okay, that's who that is. A lot of people, you saw this happen when like Trump was elected. People just saw, you know, they reacted to this boorishness of him and they're just like, that guy is the worst of the worst. He represents what's not good. Anyway, all you're doing there is creating a story. It's like I've been watching House of Dragon. I got a couple more episodes to go. 7th episode in, I still like it. I'm into it. I listened to all the George R. R. Martin books, you know, on tape. They're fucking amazing. I highly recommend them. But like, I'm into the lore. I get it. If I'm not like just wanting to see action all the time. However, I did realize like 7 episodes in, it's just kind of a soap opera with dragons at this point. Like legitimately, that is what's happening. And in fairness, that's what a lot of the books are too. It is this intrigue and like political drama and like interpersonal stuff, but it is that. So anyway, back to the point. I'm not just diverging to talk about House of Dragon, although I did come to that conclusion. We'll see what happens, right? But anyway, you're writing a story and a character for your mom who she is now bound to. Now, this is where it gets very annoying and, you know, depending on how you look at this stuff, you can be, well, this is victim blaming. And I don't want to make it seem like if you're living a shitty life, it's like you fucked up and it's your fault. Most likely that is going to show you how powerful the change and transformation can be when you kind of take the reins of your own reality and you're like, all right, if everything is just kind of a projection of it's an objective realization of a subjective state. So the way I feel is then outpictured into the world. You then have to like, you kind of have to fucking own that. It sucks. It sucks. It basically this is really what it means. Number one, if you have any faith in like any external factor, I did a whole episode on this, right? You get it. That's you're kind of just playing like a 3-card Monte with yourself. You're hiding the thing under the cards. You're like, whoa, it's not me. I guess it's not me. And you're like, nope, it's actually you. There's the thing. There's the queen. That's what you're doing there. So annoying. I get it. I'm not saying it's your fault. You've had this relationship with your mother. In a sense, I am saying it is your responsibility to recognize your impressions of a person and fundamentally change those or find a place that allows you to change them. Does that mean you have to forgive and forget and like just totally be delusional? No, that's also not good. But you do recognize that this innate power is yours. This is what the rest of the episode will be about. You claim that and you say, okay, I now, my senses and my organs are telling me, organ's a weird word there, I guess, but my senses are telling me through my physical attributes that this is happening and this is the psychological conception of what that means, and I accept that. you're then just basically letting the outside world reflect back to you a sense of kind of like disharmony, I imagine suffering, and you don't want that. Your desire is to not have that. You had a clear intention. The beautiful thing about this is that, like, you know, on one level what this kind of desire is pointing at, which is like your springboard to getting over like having a difficult relationship with your mom, who's like, you don't want your mom to think of your mom as a narcissist. I also just kind of imagine a lot of people, listen, being a parent, as many people know, is fucking insane. It's just crazy. So you just try to do the best to not fuck your kids up. I think that's the general idea, and instill some sense of virtue and awareness in them. But like, the easiest thing to do in family relationships, I know it's difficult. I have not mastered this myself. I'm not some fucking enlightened sage. It's like, well, my family life is always harmonious. There's never conflict. That's not what family is for. Family is really to kind of show you like close expressions of yourself, but just how a few factors can really kind of, you know, change potential things. I always think about like families, I don't know if they exist, where like it's just all good all the time. Like that doesn't exist. Like, even if that's what you see on like Instagram or TikTok or whatever, like that's not a thing. Like I know there are those like weird couples who are like, we never fought in 72 years. I mean, it's like, all right, well, you're a lunatic. That's not a real thing to aspire to. I mean, good luck holding yourself to that in interpersonal relationships. Now, granted, could you imagine yourself as one of those people? Yes. And I do think that's what we're moving towards, because the best way to not have conflict with people is to just basically like be like, nope, not doing that. If your perspective remains the same on the person or even deepens into what you believe, that's not it. You want a fundamental shift. Your reaction will tell you where you are. It's your litmus test for telling you where you are in terms of like whether you believe this shit or not, or whether it feels like a real thing. Okay. So I just want to point out, like, persist, number one. That's my first piece of advice. If you're imagining something and it's not going well, persist. This is like this is like what seems like a cop out for the kind of reasoning behind how this stuff works. It feels like kind of an out until it works. And then you're like, oh, it wasn't an out. It wasn't like a trick. You will achieve what you believe. Your life is a constant affirmation of that. So this is just how it goes. Like it's like some thing that you can't be proven. You will prove it to yourself. So the persistence in the belief that, you know, you want the relationship with your mother or your parents or whatever you are really going for there, emotional security, love, whatever it is, you know, that's achievable. You just have to actually watch your reactions to see if that's how you feel that they're acting. Also, just the idea of what normalcy means to you is something to be examined. I have absolutely no idea what normal is. I know what, like, when someone's being like a nut and you're just like, can you be normal? I know what that means for me in any given situation, but maybe define some characteristics that you would like to see in the positive, or the way you would react if someone was acting the way you wanted them to. How would you react to that? That's the state to go for. Leave the other person out of it, ultimately because they're just kind of a projection of you, and it's you creating that as like a creator. And like, I guess like kind of the hard part of this, that like totally we can't fully comprehend it, is like, if this is true, right, it means you really are God, right? And imagine what you would be doing to fix yourself in linear time and be able to move your perspective up and down to experience different segments of reality, different realities in and of itself. It's astounding, but it is a real phenomenon nevertheless. The idea here is to get familiar enough where you kind of awaken yourself from the dream of life, right? I won't say permanently, like that's not really a thing, but enough to the point where you're not ruled by your external circumstances, which admittedly, in a world predicated seemingly on content. Remember when we didn't hear the word content? I started mentioning content because it was part of my job as like digital marketing, you know, for like nonprofits and stuff, and trying to get the word out. And so like, I remember just content entering my lexicon. I'm like, all right, I'm going to start saying this word because this is the easiest way to find it. And now it's like everyone's just talking about content. Like, we got to create content, got to have content, should mean content, should mean that we're getting a little bit more from it, but you just don't want to be swayed by content too much. Allow yourself to experience an emotion, and if it's lovely, by all means, go for it. But don't like let it shape your worldview. This will become increasingly important as I think the natural reaction, there's always a counterpoint, there's always a counterbalance to any energy. Otherwise, that would be like totally boring. It was just like, we all consensusly agree that this is awesome, it's the best. Do not realize how boring and static that would get over time. Not saying we want violence, not that we don't want violence. The reaction of violence is always a misunderstanding of how to use this internal kind of power. That always, literally always. Violence is not really an elegant way of expressing. It's a thing. It's a vibe. There's a reason that like people watch it in entertainment and we like that. And I wouldn't say like it, but are like drawn to it. It's a vibe. It's a state. You can totally like get with that. But it's generally looked at as kind of like, all right, I mean, like, why would you choose that of all the infinite possibilities of how to react to something? Violence seems like a little lower on the spectrum. I don't want to make too many judgments about violence. Violence, you're okay by me. I understand your function. I'm just saying, maybe, we don't have to always tune into that. But if that's your natural reaction, if that's something that's being projected out to you into the world, which I imagine is a theme we are working on, given the state of the world, don't be swayed by it. That's it. Don't be swayed by it. It's not that big of a deal. All right, let's talk a little bit. We're going to go back to the Bible stuff. First of all, just wash all the literal conceptions of the Bible from your mind. Like, do not look at this, or anything for that matter, as inherently as a literal thing that turns way too many people off from being able to identify with, like, listen, for something to last as long as the Bible, which would, regardless of when you think it was really written, thousands of years, hundreds of years, whatever. Don't worry about the linear time. It is a profound work that there's such a reaction to it. And this is something that I think is there's something there, right? So hopefully you could understand that you're not going to be taking this literally, but you're going to be looking at it from a psychological sense, and you playing all the characters. It's fun. Just try it out. Anyway, so I was reading in one of the books by Neville Goddard that he starts talking about how we're the biblical Mary. And I always get interested whenever there's like feminine aspects in mysticism that are like outwardly just addressed or acknowledged. It's relatively rare, which I think can be a turnoff. Like, it's always our father this, our father this, our father. But there's a reason for that. It's not just the patriarchy rearing its head. I used to think that. I was like, it's fucking patriarchy. It's always the father, this bullshit. It's like, no, there's a reason that the father and the creator, in one sense, are identified. There's another reason that the mother and the creator are identified. They have different functions, right? Different functions. There's a polarity there. There's not always polarity. Sometimes there's unity. But in this, there's duality. So we just it's cool. Anyway, I do get interested when people are like, well, he's like, you're the biblical Mary. I'm like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? And he's like, here's the deal. Mary had a virgin birth. Right? There was no dad. What? That's stupid. Doesn't make sense. That's how we know the Bible's fake. That's not the point. It's not literal. There's not a woman named Mary being like, I'm pregnant. Pop, here's Jesus Christ. That's not a thing that happened. If you think that thing happened, or you think that other people think that happened, you're getting caught up in the drama of it. Don't worry about it. But Mary, being a psychological state, a version of you who is capable of this action, right, comes up with an idea or a desire and then births that desire into the world. So Mary here is water, right? This is like the psychological truth of the mysteries, right? The things that actually create and construct or allow things to appear is probably the best way to say it, into our physical reality, right? So you stay faithful to that desire, right? So the Holy Ghost, my conception of literal Christianity is not that great, and you will consistently hear that in my takes on things about the Bible. But my psychological understanding of it is adequate. I won't say it's great, it's adequate, but the Holy Ghost is your holy desire, right? Why is it a Holy Ghost? You can't see it. You see ghosts around you all the time. When's the last time you saw a ghost hanging out? Like, even if you're a ghost hunter or like someone who's in touch with spirits, you seeing them out in your world? No, you're not. So it's a ghost. It's your holy desire. Those things unify. Oh, lo and behold, you get your Christian state, your state of realization. That thing is experience. So again, from this age of innocence to imagination to experience, that's the journey. And again, the goal here is just to kind of wake up to this to the point where you feel comfortable with it. It doesn't want to have to be like this. I was going to say, like, you got to talk about it all the time. I put out this podcast because I realized at some point I didn't want to, like, this stuff can get overcomplicated or get like really religiously, or people can get very serious about it. I found it was useful when talking about this with friends or otherwise to be like, this is just a thing that happens. It's not like you don't have to be weird about it. We can talk about it in a way, hopefully, that makes sense. So you can use it because the goal here is you're consistently changing your sense of self, right? This version of you that is dead, right? We're in the world of death. We understand we have to use the world of death and dying. We die to previous states. We create new states. We don't create new states. That's not the way to put it. We move to those states. We move through those states, right? The states exist as ideals. You can think of them like platonic ideals, right? There are states that exist infinitely, an infinite number of them. And we as an eternal being encompass and embody those states. So they're there. Just because we leave them doesn't mean they're not there. We move to and through those states. How do we do that? We do that again with our imagination, which we would call God, which we would call the creative principle. Before there was anything, there was this. Then we incarnated with this kind of forgetfulness, amnesiac quality here. It's like a game, but you don't want to treat it like as flippantly as a game, but you kind of want to take it not so seriously. Does that make sense? It's somewhere in that thread is how serious you should take this. So think of your imagination, right? We're going to talk about this cross again. Vertical line is the cross, is the line of imagination, right? It's limitless. There's nothing. You can just, it's just you're moving up and down in terms of your conception and what you can believe. It's your imagination. That's the limit, right? Horizontal line is time. I don't think I mentioned this in the other episode. Horizontal line is time, right? So that's intersecting where you are at any given point and what you're experiencing. So you're moving up and down. You're creating like this wave. If you really looked at it like you had a graphing calculator, I never really know how to use those, to be honest. I played Drug Wars on that. And yeah. So you basically want to just understand that your conception and belief of where you are is that vertical axis. You move up and down that. What you experience in time projected out into your world is dependent on where you are in that axis and what you believe. If you think everything sucks, things are not working out, you're poor, you're unhealthy, you're probably lower on the line, right? That's all. That's the Antichrist, by the way. It's not some fucking evil motherfucker. It's not like, what's his name? Charles Manson. I haven't seen the Dahmer stuff yet. I go through phases. I feel like most people do with the murder stuff. I used to get, really into the murder stuff. It's entertaining. I get it. But at the end of the day, I got time right now to watch Dahmer. I hear they make him sound very cool, which is great because it's nice. We want that in the world. And I'm sure people appreciate that. But I hear it's very good. So maybe I'll watch it. I don't know. Who's got the time, right? But anyway, where you are on that state, on that vertical axis, right? Again, that's the objective world. Objective. Let me say that clearly. What you're experiencing out there is always reflecting back your subjective states of consciousness, right? So desire, again, this is like your hidden identity. This is what you really want and feel and yearn to identify as. That's a desire, right? How would you achieve that desire? This is how you would do it. The goal here, even though this is a neutral principle, you will find you tend to believe things that genuinely make you feel fulfilled and feel good in a different way than if you're just like, I want this car. And that's all. You can totally have the car, by the way. I just want to be clear about that. It's not about not being able to have the car. That's a thing. That's allowed. It's just that it's to prove a point to yourself that, oh my gosh, look at this. I imagined driving in this car and people saying how good this car was and how I reacted to that. And now I'm driving this car. When that experience transpires, you cake enough of those on, even if you fall back into oblivion and just completely start reacting to all external things without regard for anything else. Even if that happens, you'll be like, oh yeah, remember that time I imagined that stuff and then it happened? Oh shit, am I doing that now? And is that why my life the way it is the way it is? Oh, should I just kind of take the reins and, self-affirm what I want to be happening and see how it happens and not react to the outside thing, maybe denying that at any given point and just see how that goes for a little bit of time? Yeah, probably worth it because I think it worked before. So again, there's this remembrance of how things work. There's this ability also to go back and, reframe, however you want to say it, revise, past incidents, which can be very useful for freeing up what feel like energetic knots in the present. If that's something you're into, you're just learning and teaching your things about how to kind of use the ultimate creative principle. Does that make sense? In that sense, I guess it is like a school. It's not like and it's as fun as you want school to be, but it's not like you have way more freedom. Like you can skip school at school and experience that reality. You know what I mean? You don't have to like go through boring classes. Maybe you do. Maybe you want that. Maybe you like that. But you should know whether you do or don't. And you should realize you have an option of when to experience that and potentially when not to experience that. So again, always test your reactions to what an imagined state feels like, entering that state feels like, right? If you're reacting, also just in the world. Let's say you were having beef with someone. You're like, I don't really fuck with this person. They're kind of like, I don't know, not that cool. And the way they're acting seems pretty obvious that they're kind of a piece of shit. Okay, boom. That's regular baseline reaction. You do an imagination thing. It doesn't even involve this person. Fuck that. It could have nothing to do with them. Or you're imagining you're living in the lap of luxury, doing whatever you want to do, hanging out, having a good time. Okay. Then you imagine this person again. At some point, you can have a conversation with them in your head, and you go, "Oh, you know what? I see that this guy. Maybe I don't want to be hanging out with them. Maybe I don't need to, be constantly involved in what they're thinking and how that relates to me. But I just feel like I hope this person has a nice day." If there's that shift there, it doesn't have to be that dramatic, doesn't have to be anything, but if there's a shift in your reaction to things that would have normally like really geeked you up and gassed you up, then that's good. You want that shift. So test your reactions to things. If you also, like I found, I don't know why it happened, but like I would say like a week ago, maybe because the Dolphins were the weekly Dolphins stuff. They beat the Steelers. They lost to the Vikings. It's just been injuries. Tua is back. We win. Defense seems to play better. They're an average team right now. Like half of the NFL is average, if not more. It's depressing. You can tell by my enthusiasm that we won the game. What was cool is a guy, Noah Igbenanine, caught the final kind of game-ending play. I like the little mystical wink of the guy's name being Noah. Also, he's just been truly, before this game, like a total liability. Like he's been on the team for 3 years. He was a high draft pick, second-round pick, and has not been able to get on the field. Now we literally just don't have cornerbacks. We're putting out like fucking Fedulum out there, this fucking short little white guy special teamers playing cornerback. When's the last time you saw a white cornerback, by the way? Seahorn? Archuleta? There's no white cornerbacks. This tells you something about the athleticism and skills of that position. So white boys aren't even trying. Good for Christian McCaffrey. Happy for him. We're just doing football stuff. We're just going to turn three-quarters of the way into the show. We're just going to change this into an NFL show. Really just to fuck with the people who can't stand it, right? Anyway, Dolphins, go Dolphins. They're 4-3. I don't know. They just slowly kind of suck the life out of you. Just win. This is my real test. Is when the Dolphins win the Super Bowl, I am peaking. Peak imagination. Just laying that claim there. If the Dolphins win the Super Bowl, 100% my doing. Okay, cool. Anyway, it's just you have to deal with it at this point. It's just something that has to happen. Anyway, your reactions, you want to observe them. You want to make sure that hopefully they have changed in some way. That should tell you that you're on the right path. You are feeling this in a different way. It is the feeling, right? It is the feeling, right? To go back to that Mary thing, you really do have to have that conception in mind, right? The conception, Holy Conception. You really do have to have this idea, this desire clear in your head, right? That's like, go through that as much as you need to, and then just note your reactions afterwards. Once it feels natural, once nothing can sway you and go, wow, it doesn't look good now, but I know this is happening. So, and you don't want it to be stubborn, like not stubborn to the point of like I said, like no nanny boo boo, but kind of nanny boo boo, kind of basically like, hey, I know this is really something that works. I've experienced it before. I absolutely recognize its validity. I know that some of this, if not all of it, is predicated on me maintaining kind of agency over my internal reactions to things. That's a large part of it. Oh, now I remembered what I was talking about. So I noticed like a week ago or so, like I was just reading these articles in the news, just like basic stuff. Like I should have no reaction to it. That's normal state, like no reaction, just like, okay, sure, okay. But I was getting angry at like various things. And I'm like, what is this? And it was like 2.5 days. And whatever that was, it didn't last. But that was like a clear indicator for me that something had shifted. It didn't feel like in a positive way. It wasn't like based on like a thing. Like, I don't think you want to be living in the vibe of being angry and swayed by external things. That's usually a good touch point. Kanye West, we can thank for this amazing gift of, if you get all riled up by Kanye, or Ye, let's be respectful, Ye, if you get riled up by him, trust me, first of all, not worth it. Totally not worth it. You're just going to be confounded and confused and upset because this is like a fucking spray attack. It's just not, you just don't worry about it. Even if you're Jewish, I'm Jewish. I self-identify. Both my parents are Jewish. Do I celebrate all of the holidays and stuff? No, not really. It's a lot of work sometimes, and I don't really believe necessarily in the ways that I was raised Jewish in terms of like the literal interpretations of what these things and conceptions mean, right? That's all. No big deal. But yeah, just don't be offended by it. Just like, that's the best thing you can do, is be like, all right, that guy's crazy. Also, if Kanye puts out another album, 100% listening to it, and it's probably gonna be amazing. So like, what are you gonna do there? We're really starting to have to answer these questions. I was like, what if Hitler made dope beats? What if he just had your favorite beat? What if Hitler made that? How do you feel about that beat now? The correct approach is, obviously we don't want Hitler making dope beats. That's weird. It's not a great vibe. Like Hitler on the beats, we don't want that as a thing. But if it did exist, you gotta parse that. You gotta be like, that is a dope beat. But Hitler, you shouldn't be mass genociding people. That's not cool. But it is a dope beat. And you can get to that point, you're doing pretty good. Because you gotta be able to recognize a dope beat. You do. It's just like, wow, it really grooves. That's fucking amazing. Can't not bob my head to this. You don't want to deny that in yourself, but you also want to be like, hey, maybe not the mass genocide. Not so great. So Kanye's just kind of like, a couple gradients below that apparently now. He's fine. He's also like, his sense of humor, like, I don't know. It's not like, I don't want to like say it's not the best. It's just like, it's a type of humor. Right? It's like, and it is really something that I would say most people don't find very funny, but a lot of the times he's trying to be funny, and like he does probably have some conceptions about reality that are misguided on some level, but we don't have to bind him to that state, right? We don't have to do that. We don't have to imagine him going through a mental breakdown, so therefore that's not cool. Just imagine being like, how do you turn this around? And if not, what a ride. And thanks for the entertainment. And your music's good. So, that's a place to get to. You do want to kind of get back there. Again, because we're just going to hammer this point. Like, you have to stay faithful to what you believe in. And overall, I do think you want to believe in a world that is, good for as many people as possible, if not all of them. And while that sounds like a very far off, impossible ideal, if everyone did believe that was true, we would experience that. Now, the trick is to recognize we're kind of doing that anyway. There is a perfect balance to how this reality works. It can feel more nefarious and violent and chaotic than we would like. And if we want to kind of not chill in that vibe, it's up to us to kind of raise that frequency of our awareness to kind of stabilize that. That involves some work and effort for sure. So just be aware of that. Again, also terribly inconvenient to have to be an omnipotent being. Not cool. No omnipotent being would not have a sense of, you have to have a sense of humor to actually recognize how fucked up that is. Like, come on, really? Everything is because of that. I can't shift any responsibility away, but I got to create things. And he's like, no, you don't have to. You don't have to, but you're doing it. So it does imply some desire to experience that. Therefore, just imagine, check yourself as much as possible. Really, when you are getting thrown to and fro, I don't know how to say that. Everyone's getting brain frog. Total brain frog out here. I don't know. It's just the vibe. I'm just trying to enjoy it as much as I can and really just sit into the states and focus on objective states or subjective states that feel right for me right now. It's a good time to really refocus on what you want. I would say that's we'll do the next episode. Maybe I'll sneak one in before November. Or we'll just do November on the Patreon or something. The energy preview, it is, at least for October, it's been just really time to just focus on what you want and apply this stuff as best you can, right? It's just getting shaky sometimes in a lot of ways for people, and you don't want to get too shook. I myself get shook. I don't want to give the impression I do not get shook. I totally get shook. It's important to admit that. If you never get shook, rest assured, I don't want to say this in some menacing way, something will shake you. It may be good shaking, but something will shake you. No one wants to live in a state of pure comfortableness for too long. You think you do, and then you get bored. And boredom is not a sign of something being wrong. And it could be hundreds of years of just complete comfortableness. But you probably will then forget some aspect of your ability to create states because it's relatively static. We like dynamic, right? Not all the time, but it's nice to know you can do that. Anyway, that's this week's episode. Monday, I'm going to try to stick to that schedule just so we're all on the same page. Readings are open. I think, we're getting there. Next month, I'll open up those Christ consciousness ones. Those are the longer ones and the more in-depth and wooey ones. I'll try to do that every December at some point, and I'll let people know beforehand. Patrons will probably have first crack because they've been asking at various times when those are available. Other than that, everything is cool. Patreon is still there. We're doing stuff. I'm going to just put more content that I record there, like I said, with guests, and maybe we'll move those energy previews. That feels like a Patreon thing, right? It does. Patrons, you agree? It does. Yeah. It's we should be putting that stuff there. Energy readings now behind Patreon. Gated. Sign up and give me your soul. I will say this, especially with this last crypto cycle where I just spent like a fucking maniac when I had it, which I do think is a good approach in crypto because that shit will go down again. So spend that money you make. There really is something to be said for the exchange of money as a medium of understanding things. So nothing is priced. Listen, we're not raising Patreon prices for inflation. Should I do that? Just like bump everything up 10%, 8% based on fucking consumer price index every month? Sorry, Patreon is now 22 cents more because inflation, because that's a real thing. Yeah, okay. So I just do think there is. That's why the Discord is kind of the pay and get in thing rather than you got to keep paying to stay in. That feels not cool. So you can always do that. Other than that, things are cool. We're having good times. Hopefully, I'm going to work on my health. That would be good. Maybe some wealth. Maybe some harmony. Maybe some peace and creativity. I think that's enough. That's enough right now. We don't want to be greedy. We don't want to be greedy. Just those eternal states of awareness. That's all. Okay, that's it. I'll see you in next week. Bye-bye.